This is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast. I'm Jeff Berwick. We're here at Freedomfest in Las Vegas. Cheers. I'm with Wendy McElroy, one of my favorite writers. Been reading her for a long time. She's been writing for a long time. She's been involved in the freedom movement and all sorts of philosophy about it for a long time, and it's really great to meet you in person.
It's wonderful to meet you.
Thank you. And the first question I always ask our first-time guests is, how did you become an anarchist?
Murray Rothbard. I met Murray Rothbard when I was about 21 years old, back in about 1983, and Murray was not merely charming, but one of the most powerful arguers and intellectual forces I've ever met. When I met Murray, I had come to libertarianism through civil liberties, and I had divided the whole area to some degree of libertarianism into civil liberties and economics, and it seemed to me that depending on which one you focused on was a defining aspect of the kind of the characteristics with which you argued and what you pursued in the movement. When I met Murray, I realized that there was no division between civil liberties and economics, that it was all one set of rights, that your right to make a living was indistinguishable from your freedom of speech, from your freedom of religion, that it was all a matter of the control over your own body and your right to express yourself. And it was a big revelation for me. And the fact that he was so charming, frankly, was a large part of my...
Did you have a crush on him?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Purely platonic, but I've often said that I don't know whether or not I became an anarchist because of the strength of his arguments or because he called me sweetie so often. And he had this lovely, lovely Brooklyn accent when he said, "Oh, sweetie." It just was lovely.
Well, yeah, he's got some pretty good arguments, but I think that's why one of the
why you became a libertarian, because he called you sweetie? Or
oh no, he never called me sweetie, and I still like his arguments. That's sort of the point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
So, so that was 1983, did you say?
Yep.
Okay. So
I've been around a while.
Yeah. We just had Jeffrey Tucker on, and he also brought up Murray Rothbard. I think a little later he was talking about like 1985, he might have said.
Mm-hmm.
So did you know Jeffrey Tucker back then as well, or was that?
I haven't, no, Jeff and I met about 20 years ago when he was working for the Mises Institute, but no, not that long.
Okay.
But I've just, we've renewed our acquaintance, and Jeff is like this dynamo now.
Yeah.
with the Laissez-Faire Book Club. He is, which the whole purpose of the Laissez-Faire Book Club is to explore the ideas of how to live liberty. It is so depressing these days for liberty in terms of the police state that's arising, that's the United States,
Yes.
that a lot of us, you either burn out or you find ways around the state.
Yes.
And what we're trying to do right now is to find ways, whether it's alternative currencies, whether it is networking, whether it's using technology in new and innovative ways. We think freedom is more inventive and creative than statism, and I think we can outrun it.
Absolutely. Well, you look at Soviet Union or East Germany versus West Germany, or South Korea versus North Korea. When you have a massive statism regime, you just look at the difference, North Korea and South Korea, and how there's any debate. But for some reason, people keep coming back to this idea of we need the state, and they keep coming back to socialism as well, which is, I don't know if it's a mental defect or a genetic disorder, or, you know.
A quest for power.
Is that the way you see it?
That's part of it. I think that there is one of the things going on that's amazing in the world today is the absolute blatant quest for power and corruption that's been going on. Murray Rothbard, to get back to where we started, used to say that one of the charms of politicians and the political system in the 1800s was they basically had no PR agents. so that you knew that they were blatantly corrupt. You know, they didn't.
Right.
And then they went through a phase where they had PR agents, and everything they did was noble. Everything they did was. Now we've gone back to the point where They have no PR. They have PR agents, and it's not working, and everything's still seen as corrupt. It's like it's so corrupt that even the PR agents and the spin and all the legitimacy that they're putting on it is just being torn away, and it's being seen as blatant evil. I think a lot of what's going on is nothing more than a money grab, a power grab, and it's not going to go on much longer.
I don't think so either, and I write about that in the Dollar Vigilante.
Yes, you do.
All these statist systems, all these collectivist systems, socialism, they're all collapsing because they could never work. That's what always happens in these sort of systems. The only sort of system that works is to allow freedom and to allow the people to create and do not limit them. And it's just, so I really think that in the next few years they're going to have a collapse of the fiat currency system. Who knows what happens after that, but that's really going to limit the growth of this statist system. And thanks to the internet, I wouldn't have a lot of hope without the internet, but with the internet, if we can keep spreading these ideas, who knows, maybe we can come out on the other side in an almost state of anarchy. As long as it's not that hard to understand. I don't know why people don't understand. Just don't initiate force on another person, and that's basically it, isn't it?
I don't understand either.
They understand it in kindergarten.
People understand anarchy. People live anarchy.
Yes.
When you go home to your family, you're living anarchy.
Yes.
When I walk home to my husband, when I'm in a family with my friends, I'm living in a state of anarchy. I don't appeal to the government. My husband and I argue about what movie to see. Somehow we resolve it. We don't have a court system. Isn't it amazing? I make dinner. I don't have regulations as to the standards of my kitchen. People in their personal lives live anarchy.
Right.
If you could let them know that they are living anarchy, and it's only when they step outside all the relationships that they control, all the relationships that they value, and go into to deal with strangers, that this third party comes in and says, I should intercede and I'll make it so much better than it is in your family life, than it is with your friends.
Yeah.
And
just give me total control over yourself.
What is rewarding in your life? Is it your family and your friends, or is it your relationship with the state? And it's the part of your life that is anarchy. It is your family and your friends.
Yeah, I totally agree, of course. One of the interesting things that you talk about that's a little different from probably any guest I've ever had is you talk a lot about feminism, but I think it's a feminism that it isn't what a lot of people have heard of, a feminism, if you watch, the normal TV.
No, it is.
But perhaps you could explain a little bit about your thoughts on feminism.
Certainly. Well, feminism today is usually identified with mainstream feminism or gender feminism, and the feminism that I espouse is individualist feminism, which says that women and men should be equal under just law being defined as laws that defend, protect person and property equally for men and women, and applied equally all the laws. It was the feminism that was the roots of American feminism that arose from abolitionism, the radical anti-slavery movement in the 1830s, that said that every human being was a self-owner. Every person owned everything beneath their skin. And the women who were involved, who were largely Quaker women, were led to finally ask themselves, are we fighting for black men's rights, or are we fighting for black women's rights as well? And by the way, as long as we're fighting for black women's rights, what about us? Because at that point there were many, many laws. Women could not own property. Women had
in the U.S.?
Yes.
Women could not own property.
In the 1800s, women
Really?
could not own property.
That.
If they were single, they could. If they married, their husband inherited basically had all their property. The husbands had custody of all the children. The husbands could commit them to institutions with nothing but their signature. They could not sign contracts without their husband's permission. So there were many, many things in the 1800s that women justly complained about. My goodness, I would have been burning, I would have been a revolutionary back then.
I believe it.
Yeah, I would have been. And
you're a revolutionary now, so.
Thank you. But what's happened now is that women, move it forward about a century and a half, women have really accomplished most of the political goals. That there are certain inequities, like midwives are still oppressed by the AMA, but overall, women are now the recipients of entitlement from government. They have everything from affirmative action to minimum wage to sexual harassment laws, and I happen to think that that's as bad for women as being oppressed. You should not be, if you want to be independent and you want to be free, you need to not be entitled or oppressed by government. You basically need to stand on your own 2 feet. And if you want to have gender justice, let alone some kind of gender civility and understanding in society, you can't have laws like there are in the family court system, where men are stripped of their rights to children and are penalized by highly punitive support orders.
It's so interesting that you call yourself a feminist and you're basically trying to take away all sorts of entitlements to women. You could almost call yourself a masculinist.
I have heard that before.
But no, I totally get what you're saying, but it's just funny. It's almost like you flipped the whole thing. But I totally agree, because every time that a government gives entitlements to people, they destroy those people. Welfare destroys people. What they did to the Native Americans, let's put them on a reservation,
Yes.
give them lots of stuff.
Yes.
Well, what happened?
Oh, what happens with blacks when you do minimum wage?
Exactly.
Basically, you create huge black unemployment,
But the people
especially among youth.
who want to give that, that's right, the people who want to give that, they're all, well, we're so good and you're bad because you don't want to give them stuff that I'm stealing from you, by the way.
You know, I think one of the reasons that I consider myself a feminist and not a masculinist, though I don't rebel at that title,
Okay.
is that there are certain issues that are unique to women. For example, reproduction. That I have focused on. I focused on it a lot more when I was younger, and it was more of a burning issue for me, about things like abortion, birth control. Now, I'm not saying those don't affect men,
Right.
but they affect men in totally different ways than they affect women.
Agreed.
And when I was younger and wrote a great deal about abortion, it was from a specifically feminist point of view, and at that point there actually is an intersection between me and gender feminism, in the sense of I am very strongly pro-choice, a woman's body, a woman's right. Not tax supported, and I don't think Catholic hospitals should be made to do things against their conscience, anything, but a woman's body, a woman's right. And so there are issues like that are specifically for women, and thus I defend my feminist credentials.
Yes. No, you're actually trying to help women, but to most people it would appear like you're not, because you're trying to take away entitlements. But you see those entitlements as being a bad thing, which you're totally correct
Absolutely.
on. You know, there's only a few real topics that are difficult, in my opinion. And I just had most things are simple. Just do not aggress against others. But I just talked with Jeffrey Tucker, and he was talking about intellectual property, and we still haven't got all the intellectuals of mostly free market work. We haven't totally come up with something that's perfect yet in terms of intellectual property, and who knows if we ever will. The other one, though, is abortion. I always have that question. If anyone would ever ask me, what do you think about abortion? I just go, you know, I'm not going to aggress against anyone. So if I know a woman wants an abortion, I'm not going to aggress against her to stop her. But beyond that, it gets a little murky. When does someone become alive? Do you have an opinion on at what point that person has its own rights?
Well, okay.
That can't be violated?
You've conflated two, boy, you're good. You conflated in one sentence two totally fundamental principles. One is, when is someone alive? When does someone have rights? Now, I am quite willing to say that when is someone alive is a biological question. It's not a political question. When does life begin? Mm-hmm. When do rights begin? Now, the whole idea of libertarianism, of which I'm quite fond, is that you own your own person. You own everything under your skin.
Right.
And if in fact you postulate that there is something alive within you, and I'm quite willing to believe that a fetus is alive in some sense. I think it's
as are bacteria.
But if you
but it is human, so I'm sorry. I'm just trying to think this through with you.
It's a potential human being.
A potential human being.
Potential human being. It is growing into a human being and growing into an individual with rights. Now, if you say that there is an individual with rights from the moment of conception or whatever, you are postulating a situation where there are two human beings with the claim on one human body. That this other human being within me has the right to the breath I take in through my lungs, the food I ingest in my body, the blood that is flowing in my veins, that in fact there are two rights claims to one body. That is not merely a problem for libertarianism, that destroys libertarianism itself. If it were a lifeboat situation that occurred like once in every 100 years or something, the philosophical lifeboat situation. But we're talking about something that occurs every day, commonly, and is part of the normal human experience. If part of the normal human experience, it denies the very fundamental of individual rights. Every person has a claim over their own body and what's beneath it. Then we have a real problem. We should just scrap libertarianism. I don't think it's that difficult. I don't think that there is any claim over my body that I do not consent to. Now, you can say that I consent to it by having sex, and that's the consequence, and I should bear the consequence. Nonsense. I haven't consented to anything. And to bear the consequences, one of the ways of bearing the consequences is having an abortion. And paying for it myself, not tax dollars, not through forcing a Catholic doctor to abrogate his conscience to perform the procedure. I don't like abortion. I think my moral position, which is different than my political position on abortion, is that it is a human being growing, a potential human being growing within the woman. And the closer that human being gets to being actualized, 5 months rather than 2 months, 7 months rather than 5 months. I place a very high value on life, on human life. And I place a high value not merely on existing human life, but potential human life. And it bothers me tremendously on a moral basis if someone aborts at a late period of life. Can I tell them not to do it politically? I don't think so. It's still under their skin. It's still their body. It's being fed by their blood, by their breath, and by the food that goes into it. I don't like it, but
I'd have to agree with you on that. Your perspective, it's very interesting. It is their life, and so what right do you have to get involved in their life, even if it's a very late stage? That just goes down a whole bad thing where we have to now.
Oh, you don't want to go down that.
Right. You did not want to go down there, and so I think I really like your perspective on it, and that's given me some good insights that I can think about. But I really think that's only one of the sort of things that is difficult. Everything else about anarchism and about libertarianism and this philosophy is quite simple, really. It's not that hard.
No, it's not. and the difficult parts, like the abortion thing.
Yeah.
I always like to think, compared to what?
Yes.
Compared to what? Okay, libertarianism and does not have perfect children's rights. I'm still knocking myself on children's rights. I have not resolved children's rights for myself. But compared to what? Does socialism do it any better? Does fascism? Does what system answers these questions better? And if in fact you look at libertarianism and say, really doesn't give me the answer I'm satisfied with, does it give the best answer of all the answers out there? And I'll almost always come back and say, yeah, it does. And at least it gives no worse than any other answer out there. And given that it answers other things, yay, libertarianism.
Yeah, I agree. We had a guest on, Adam Kokesh, and he interviewed one of those Occupy Wall Street guys, and he asked him with a microphone, he said, do you own your own body? And the guy responded, no. And Adam said, who? right there, it's already pretty funny.
Right there.
Then he goes, well, who owns it? He said, my parents and the government.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Oh
so
my goodness.
Some people out there have a long way to go to get even close to where we're getting at with owning your own body.
But by the way, it's me. I own it. Proprietor right here.
Yes. Do not aggress against
Do not aggress. We already had an ugly coffee incident. But nevertheless.
Well, it's been great to talk to
Yeah.
you. Do you have a website or
Yes.
anything you want to tell people where they can get more information on yourself?
My homepage is www.wendymcelroy.com. I also have ifeminist.com, and I'm a friendly feminist. If you want to just write me, it's wendy@wendymcelroy.com.
That's great, and thank you very much for joining me. And
Thank you.
I hope we meet again sometime
I do
soon.
too.
All right, thank you, and that's it for Anarchast. Peace, love, and anarchy.